On July 31st, Riad Salameh stepped down as the governor of Lebanon's central bank. A small group of people gathered outside to cheer and applaud him as he waved goodbye. It was probably not the send-off that Salameh had dreamed of, but for many Lebanese, his tenure had been a nightmare. This week on the New Arab Voice, why has Riad Salameh stepped down from the central bank? What does the future hold for the institution and the country's economy? And will the former governor be able to evade justice? I'm Hugo Goodridge, and you're listening to the New Arab Voice. Riad Salameh is a household name in Lebanon, but not a good household name. In recent years, he has become synonymous with the country's problems. As the governor of the central bank, he has overseen the collapse of the economy, with many casting him as the author of these problems. With the governor's recent departure, we sat down to discuss Riad Salameh with Karim Bittar, Professor of International Relations at St. Joseph University and friend of the podcast. I started by asking him if there was ever a time when Riad Salameh was good for Lebanon and the Lebanese economy.
Well, I'm not sure if he was good for Lebanon or the Lebanese economy, but he was certainly praised in his first years as governor. He was presented, at least in certain media, as an energetic, far-sighted governor. And he decided from the very beginning to spend significant amounts of money on communication. So he reaped the benefits of these communication campaigns. And for a while, a lot of people were smitten by his profile, and even certain Western countries perceived him as a potential president of Lebanon. Now, we have to distinguish several phases in Riad Salameh's career. So he was appointed 30 years ago in 1993 by Rafiq Hariri. He was previously Rafiq Hariri's asset manager at Merrill Lynch. And until 2005, when Rafiq Hariri was assassinated, Riad Salameh was basically Hariri's man at the central bank. So he was in the shadow of Rafiq Hariri. He was implementing policies that were decided by Rafiq Hariri, and Rafiq Hariri kept him on a pretty tight leash. It was after Rafiq Hariri's assassination that progressively Riad Salameh started to lose touch with reality. He succumbed to hubris. He started to believe everything that the media on payroll was saying about him. And he ended up orchestrating this massive nationwide Ponzi scheme that led to the collapse of the Lebanese economy in 2019. So in the 1990s, we could criticize his monetary, his economic policies, his lack of a macroeconomic vision. He was mostly a broker, a wheeler-dealer, a shrewd speculator. He never had this global vision. But the criticism was focused on policies. After 2015, 2016, it became something completely different because he came under severe accusations of corruption, embezzlement, money laundering, falsification of documents. And today, more than 6 countries in Europe are investigating the source of this massive wealth that he amassed and that he allegedly money laundered by acquiring real estate in several European countries.
You mentioned the Ponzi scheme that he has been accused of engineering. And one of Riad Salameh's big policies during his time was his so-called financial engineering. Could you briefly explain what this financial engineering was, and what impact did that have on Lebanon's economy?
Well, he was often described as a magician, as a financial wizard. But actually, these financial engineerings are pretty simple to understand. Lebanon was completely out of cash, was already going bankrupt. And it was simply an attempt to buy some time. His line of defense was saying, I am buying time until the government puts in place the necessary structural reforms, even though he could have easily guessed that the political establishment had no interest and was not going to put in place any of these structural reforms. So he started attracting foreign capital to Lebanon by offering outlandish interest rates. It worked for a while, like all Ponzi schemes, and it ended up collapsing because it always ends in collapse, but also because certain geopolitical factors accelerated this collapse. So the war in Syria, the fact that Saad Hariri, the Lebanese prime minister, was held hostage in Saudi Arabia in 2017, which led to massive escape of capital from Lebanon. The fact that Lebanese-Syrian borders were always extremely porous. So geopolitical factors certainly accelerated the collapse, but one could argue that the policies that were put in place in the 1990s would have inevitably led to this collapse because they were short-sighted, because they neglected several sectors of the economy, particularly the most productive sectors of the economy, agriculture and industry. We focused exclusively on the financial sector, on tourism and on services. And Lebanon could have gone into the knowledge economy, high tech, into many productive sectors that would have allowed Lebanese youth to stay in their country. But again, there was a complete lack of macroeconomic vision and a greedy pursuit of willingness to make money fast. It became a sort of a casino. And Riad Salameh was the croupier in this casino. He was the chief financial officer of the entire Lebanese mafia.
As you've alluded to, the economic situation in Lebanon, it's bad now, but it's been bad for a number of years. It's dramatically worsened over recent years, but it's been bad for a number of years. Why did Riad Salameh have to go now? And how do you think he was able to survive for so long?
Well, had he decided not to run for a fifth and last term in 2017, he would have saved his legacy. He would certainly have been contested by the economists and those who are policy experts, but he would not have been the guy who supervised the economic collapse. Most people think that he accepted the renewal of his term in 2017 because he was eyeing the Lebanese presidency, or that he was promised the Lebanese presidency. But to respond to the second part of your question, he would not have been able to stay at the helm of the central bank for 30 years had he not been protected by very powerful political figures from both sides of the aisle. So he was certainly close to Rafiq Hariri and to the United States of America, but he also managed to build a very close relationship with Nabih Berri, who became his last protector. And he even helped Hezbollah circumvent the US sanctions. This is why none of the Lebanese political parties objected to the renewal of his term in 2017, even though it was entirely predictable what would happen. And this is why, until the very last weeks, even after France and Germany issued Interpol notices, the government did not request his dismissal and allowed him to finish his term. He was the man who knew too much. He knows all the secrets of the Lebanese political and financial oligarchy. So they might have been afraid that he would spill the beans. And it is a system in which services rendered are always rewarded. And over the years, he offered significant services to most Western countries and to most Lebanese political parties, including Hezbollah.
With his departure, the vice president of the central bank, he spoke to reporters, gave a speech, in which he alluded to things having to change at the central bank. With Salameh's departure, is this a sign that the decision makers in Lebanon are going to start implementing serious economic reforms, and will they be the reforms requested by the IMF to ensure that funding can come into the country?
There are many reasons to be skeptical so far, even though the vice governors, even if they have serious willingness and commitment to implement reforms and sound economic policies, it is highly unlikely that they will be able to implement these reforms. I'm afraid that Riad Salameh's ghost will continue to hover over the central bank in Hamra, that his policies are here to stay, at least for a while, until there is a new governor with a comprehensive macroeconomic vision who is appointed, a new governor who ideally should not have any conflict of interests and who would have the guts to confront the Lebanese political establishment. So far, this is not the case. Some of these vice governors appear to be decent folks, but they were in office in the past few years. We did not hear any denunciation of Riad Salameh's policies. And last week, they have demanded the authorization of Parliament to continue using the already seriously depleted reserves. And I think this was a poor decision because it could create a dangerous precedent and it could jeopardize the independence of the Lebanese central bank. Because in theory, the governor of the central bank has extraordinary powers in Lebanon. He is one of the most powerful and the most independent independent governors of all central banks worldwide. However, unfortunately, because we have such an incestuous relationship between politics and finance in Lebanon, the governor often has to take into consideration the business interests of the Lebanese political elites, which is why he is often unable to push towards significant structural reforms.
You mentioned earlier how Salameh is, let's say, has legal problems across Europe. He's currently being investigated by Belgium, France, Germany, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. In brief, what have they accused him of, and can he outrun justice?
Well, he will likely be able to evade Lebanese justice, where he will benefit from political protections. It will be more difficult for him to evade the European justice. He is accused of extremely serious charges. So Fori associates the company that allowed him to siphon over $335 million was run by his own brother, was registered in the British Virgin Islands. The French judges and the German judges seem to have an extremely solid file. This is why Western governments who were previously cajoling Salameh ended up lifting any political cover. France was the first country to stop supporting Salameh in 2017. probably because Emmanuel Macron, before entering politics, was a banker. When his Lebanese friends who work in the banking sector explained to him what was happening in Lebanon, Macron immediately understood what was going on, and he was the first to speak of a Ponzi scheme. At the time, the banks and their lawyers protested, but today there is no controversy, and the World Bank published a heavy report titled Ponzi Economics. The German justice system also decided to freeze more than $120 million of real estate assets owned by Salameh or his intimate inner circle. So I think that sooner or later he will be subjected to the European justice system. However, he has been his passport was taken out by the Lebanese authorities, so he is sort of captive right now, which is in the interest of Riad Salameh himself, because he claims that he cannot respond when foreign judges want to listen to him. And it's also in the interests of the other members of the Lebanese political and financial establishment, because they are afraid that if he has to speak before a British or German or French judge, he would be tempted to reveal certain secrets that could bring down many other figures.
Could it work the other way around? And might
Yes.
his Lebanese elites give him up to save themselves and make him a scapegoat?
Yes. So his line of defense is that he is being scapegoated. To a certain extent, it is true that his associates are trying today to save their own careers and their own reputation, although they are very unlikely to be able to salvage their already severely damaged reputation. But I do not think that they are really afraid, because everything, Lebanon is such a small country. Everybody knows what has been going on. And the problem is that there is zero accountability. So let's imagine in the best case scenario that Riad Salameh would skip the country, go to France, demand legal protection, and start spilling the beans and telling the dirty secrets of all the other Lebanese politicians. I'm not even sure at this stage that those sectarian leaders' popularity will be affected. They will always find a way to deflect popular anger. This is exactly what's going on these days. They are always trying to find new scapegoats, whether Syrian refugees or sexual minorities, or to use every dirty trick in the book to evade accountability.
Riad Salameh has now gone. Lebanon's longtime intelligence head, Abbas Ibrahim, he left his position in March. The army chief, Joseph Aoun, is going shortly. Even Nabir Berri, the longtime Speaker of the House, he's 85 years old, and one way or another will have to step aside at some point. Are we seeing a new cohort of political elites in Lebanon? And have they learned from their predecessors?
Well, if we want to see the glass half full, we could argue that a page is being turned, that a new generation will soon take over. However, a more pessimistic reading would lead us to say that we are witnessing a full-fledged state collapse, the progressive hollowing out of all institutions, that Lebanese public servants are no longer showing up for work, that several senior positions are unoccupied, and the risk of Lebanon heading towards fragmentation is serious. So I think it will take a while before we see the emergence of this new generation, of this new cohort of higher public servants and politicians, because the current establishment is still digging in its heels. And not only are they digging their heels in, but they are determined to protect their interests, to make sure that their cronies are ready to take over and keep protecting their interests if they ever leave the political scene. So, judging from the history of Lebanon in the past 70 years, it is unlikely, even though a page is being turned, it is unlikely that we will witness a significant renewal of the Lebanese elites.
Someone's got to take over at the central bank. Will it be a new page there, or will it be someone in the similar mold to Salameh?
Well, in the current circumstances, with the current political elites, it will most probably be someone who will continue along the lines of Salameh's policies. However, if a new president is elected, if this president is able to form a reform-minded government, and if this comes with the support of the international community, which would put pressure so that reforms are implemented and a deal with the International Monetary Fund is reached, then we would have some serious chances of seeing someone who would really represent a clean break at the helm of the central bank. So it will all depend on whether the international community, quote unquote, is ready to continue threatening local leaders with sanctions so that we see genuine behavior modification and the formation of a reformist government that will go ahead with the IMF deal. Because the irony is that in most other countries, when the IMF intervenes, the head of the central bank is their foremost ally, whereas in Lebanon, the financial elites, the bank shareholders, and Riad Salameh were those who torpedoed the IMF negotiations and who torpedoed every single economic reform rescue proposal. So as long as we have these vested interests controlling Lebanese politics and controlling the Lebanese economy, it is unlikely that we will see a genuine reformist at the helm of the central bank. However, if international conditions change and we manage to get a package deal, a president, a prime minister, and a new head of the central bank, then we could be a little bit more optimistic. But again, the history shows that ultimately the deep state, meaning the bankocracy, the vested interests, the importers, the clergy, the intelligence services will keep running this country as they have been running it since its proclamation, the proclamation of the State of Greater Lebanon in 1920.
My final question, what would you say Riad Salameh's legacy is?
The Economist yesterday had an interesting headline. They called him the worst central bank governor in the world. They said he was the man who presided over the demise of the Lebanese economy. This could appear grossly unfair if we look at the past 30 years, but today most Lebanese would agree with the economists. They have been deprived of their life savings. They witnessed Riad Salameh completely losing touch with reality, succumbing to hubris, refusing to take even a minor part of responsibility. He has been in office for 30 years. He cannot blame his predecessors. Let's assume that he is entirely innocent he could at least have denounced the crimes and misdemeanors that were committed by the political establishment that he has been serving. So in my mind, his legacy is will be absolutely devastating, and he will enter history books in disgrace. All the previous governors of the central bank were highly esteemed jurists who always respected the Lebanese and international laws, who always refused any semblance of conflicts of interests and any conflict of interests. Even during the worst years of the civil war, one of his predecessors, Edmond Naim, managed to maintain Lebanese stability and to resist political pressure. Riad Salameh will enter history books as someone who was Rafiq Hariri's willing executioner when it came to putting in place misguided monetary policies in the 1990s, and who later was accused and probably guilty of extremely serious charges of corruption, embezzlement, money laundering.
This episode of The New Arab Voice was written and produced by me, Hugo Goodridge. Our theme music was by Omar El Phil. The New Arab Voice will be back next week. Until then, you can find all our previous episodes on all major podcast platforms. You can also check out our Instagram page and Twitter account, both at The New Arab Voice, for additional content. We also have a weekly newsletter which you can sign up for, via the link in the show notes. You can subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and you can also rate and review, which helps us spread the word. Don't forget to follow The New Arab on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for all the latest news, analysis and opinion from the region.